This is the Motor Guide XI3 install on a SportsPal. This is a 15-foot SportsPal with the square stern. And I knew this was going to be a challenge, and I got the boat here hanging just slightly bow down, slightly heavy on the front, which is pretty easy to do on the water. It's almost level, but I put it just very, very slightly bowed down, which the trolling motor battery and the motor is going to make the boat tend to ride that way anyway. And what I did was I've wedged this quick release motor guide mount with two tree felling wedges. And if you look here, I'll show you, I'm getting pretty close to level. That's dead level right there. You could see I'd probably have to add one more wedge. These wedges look like they're about 1 inch each. So I'd have to wedge it about 3 inches, but then I'd have to get longer screws, which I probably could do. But my plan is to see how this works. I think now that I'm within 1 inch of level, I think it's going to work just fine, especially since it's such a light boat and I've got a 55-pound thrust motor guide. This is with GPS. It has the handheld remote. The XI3 does not come with a foot pedal. So once you fish with one of these, it's unbelievable. I borrowed a boat last summer and was able to fish hands-free using the spotlok, and I just had to do this. And I picked up this boat. This is a very wide, stable canoe. You can stand up in it. And I picked up this boat real cheap. It's got a couple NASCAR stickers on it. Anyway, I'm going to put the motor on. It goes right on top of this mount here. We'll show you what it looks like with the motor on. Okay, I've got the motor on. It just sets on there. It's actually very pretty light, this whole setup. I think it's lighter than the Minn Kota. Anyway, you just kind of shove it back, and then you got this little screw here, and you just tighten this thing up. I got it plugged in. I hooked up the battery. That's that beep. That chirp indicated that it locked onto satellites. So it's locked onto the GPS signal. I'll show you how this deploys in just a second. Okay, so to deploy it, hopefully I won't break it here one-handed. You push this lever down. Push this lever down here, and it just deploys down there. And then it's got a little, you got to make sure it gets all the way seated. There it goes. All right, let's back up and take a look. You can see it's pretty good. It's angled up a little bit so that motor is not going to pull directly in line. But it should be pretty good. 55 pounds thrust on a 60-pound boat is shouldn't be any problem. So we'll test it. Now, if I want to, I'll order some longer screws, and I'll move that wedge up, and then maybe I'll paint those wedges green to match the boat, or black. You'll hardly see them. The other thing that worked out really lucky, this bow plate is a super thin aluminum here, but 3 of my screws on this mounting bracket actually go through the top plate, and then the wall of the canoe up under here makes a turn, and there's a flat piece that supports this bow plate. So 3 of my screws, 3 of the 4, are actually through double thickness aluminum. So they're through the top rail and this bow plate. And so actually it feels rock solid. So let me see if I can fire up the remote here. There it goes. Turn the prop on here. Let's see if it'll, there it goes. So here we go. The prop had a little wobble to it, and I had to tighten it down. And it looks like my wobble is gone now. Maybe there's just a little wobble. It's just, oh man, it's really good. There is just the slightest wobble. I don't know if you can see that in the video. That's full speed right there. Turn it all the way down here. Let's put it on low speed. Here's the motor guide remote, very lightweight. And it has cruise control, heading lock, anchor mode. You can record and store 8 routes. And we'll have to get this thing out on the water and see what it does. The other thing with that mounting plate is it actually goes on and off really fast with those wedges. So I can actually, if I'm going on a paddling trip where I don't want the plate on there, I can just dismantle the whole thing in just a couple of minutes. Here's a shot of the motor in the stowed position, and be a little tricky for the guy up front with a paddle. It won't really be in his way when he's sitting there, but it might be hard to paddle. He'll have to paddle mostly on the right side. Most of us are right-handed, so the guy paddling in the back can steer. The other thing, this boat is rated for 5 horsepower. You can actually put a 5 horsepower motor right here. The other thing about this boat that's pretty amazing is as thin of aluminum and light as it is, it's rated for 705 pounds gear and people capacity. If you start looking at John boats, canoes, and other small boats and look at the weight capacities, 700 pounds for a small boat is pretty impressive. So you can fit the trolling motor battery, 2 large adults, and all the gear, even a outboard motor on this thing, and still be well under the capacity. And I researched a lot of boats, and to get more capacity than that, you really got to go to a much heavier, wider, bigger boat. Here is a shot from under the boat, and you can see that prop is pretty good. It's definitely angling up the motor, but if you imagine that prop, it's going to be putting almost all the force in a rearward direction. So I actually don't think I'm going to try to level it any more than what it is. Obviously, being out on the water will be the ultimate test, but just wanted to show you this view.